Good morning, everyone. So, as the introduction said, Simon Crocker, I'm the Senior Director of Systems Engineering at Palo Alto Networks. So for those that are not familiar with Palo Alto Networks, we're a pure-play cybersecurity company. So we're very proud of our origins around cybersecurity. So one of the things that we really drive and strive for is our mission. And we envisage that each day is going to be more safer and secure than the day before. Okay, so that's what we're striving for as a mission, as an organisation. Sounds nice, and wish it was true. Wish we could actually get to this stage, but anyway, that's Palo Alto Networks. So when we start looking at what's changed in the marketplace over the last couple of years, three things have really accelerated. Those being the hybrid workforce. I think COVID really sort of accelerated everything around that space. The shift to cloud has accelerated even faster. So I'm sure there aren't very many people in this room that haven't got some cloud adoption within your organisation. And then the use of AI and ML. Sounds like marketing buzzword bingo, doesn't it, already? AI and ML is accelerating everything within business transformation today. So that's all very well and good, but when it comes to the cybersecurity side of things, which is generally very high up the priorities of most of you in the room today, we find that a lot of point products that are being scattered around as silver bullets to try and address some of these challenges are just actually causing more mayhem and more problems for organisations because they leave security gaps in your security posture. So the landscape is continually evolving around cyber threats. Now I've tried to, we're an American company, so I thought I'd at least change it to pounds rather than US dollars. I did actually do the conversion, but the exchange rate isn't great at the moment, so it's pretty much the same. But anyway, ransomware is one of the big threats to organizations today. The attack vector still remains high as phishing. Phishing is probably the number one attack vector that the bad guys are using today. But ultimately, what they really want to do is get some ransomware in there. That's the most pervasive attack being used against organizations today. There are many other attacks in there that you can see. Log4j, you've got SolarWinds, so supply chain, which probably scares a lot of you in the room today. Loads of attacks that are available to the bad guys. So when I'm thinking about the ransomware attacks, ransomware is not a one-dimensional attack. They've actually got this concept of the quadruple extortion attack now. So they don't just try and extort money from you from the encryption of data. They then start looking at data theft. They look at denial of service, always trying to turn the screw on you as an organisation. So ultimately, you're going to pay up. And then there's harassment as well. So lots of bad things can possibly happen to you as an organisation, but hopefully, working with the likes of Palo Alto Networks, we can try and mitigate against that. In the interest of time, I'll skip that one. So as a cybersecurity organisation, we really strongly believe in three main things when it comes to security, especially today. Security needs to be integrated. There's no point in having lots of little point products that do one thing but don't talk to each other. They don't share any information. They don't share any indicators of compromise or anything like that. That's really bad. Automation, I'm sure you see in business today, in business transformation, automation is absolutely critical. Humans just can't keep up with the demands that are coming in when it comes to cybersecurity. So you need to automate things. And then also, keep it simple. Really, you need to simplify, consolidate. Simplification is actually a really good thing when it comes down to security posture. There was talk years ago about having layered security and all of those sort of things. I mean, it does work. to a degree, but it also enters a load of complexity into your organization, and how do you manage it? So ultimately, if you can simplify things, that's going to really help you out. So Palo Alto Networks as an organization, we try and keep things simple. So we have basically a few main components within our cybersecurity platform. We cover network security, which is our genesis and our heritage, which was probably many of you might know of us from Next Generation Firewall. We do way more than that now. I'm going to talk a little bit about SASE today, which is our cloud-delivered solution. Cloud security, how do you secure a multi-cloud environment? Really important, from code to cloud. So again, plenty of point products about there, but you talk about a CI/CD pipeline where you've got coders at one end of the pipeline writing code, and then eventually it's going to have to run in the cloud. You've got to make sure that you've got your governance, risk and compliance across that. You've got to make sure that the coders are not bringing any CVEs, any threats into that code, because one end where they're writing the code to the bit where it gets actually run out in the wild, you can go 1,000 times. You can multiply that problem 1,000 times by the time it actually hits the cloud. And then endpoint security as well. We have solutions around that. But ultimately, security operations is where we're going to be focusing a lot of our strategy going forward. And that is around the autonomous SOC, which is the nirvana, right? You want to have 2 or 3 people within a SOC that run the SOC autonomously, where they have automation within that, and they can deliver results much, much quicker than they do today, where they just hit by a constant tsunami of alerts coming in. So that's pretty much Palo Alto Networks, and we also have threat intelligence as well as a service. So I'm going to talk a little bit about zero trust and some of the misconceptions around that, and also strategy and how you can go about that. So Forrester said a few years ago that we have a very robust portfolio to deliver zero trust everywhere, which is great. Portfolio, an integrated portfolio with simplicity will really help you out when it comes to implementing the concept of zero trust. So zero trust, we talk about this with customers all the time, to be honest. We've been advocating zero trust as a methodology and a concept for many years. It's a voyage of discovery for most of you. You can't do a big bang. It is also not a product, okay? It's a methodology, it's an idea, a concept. But how do you go about that? Normally you go about this using things like you need to identify the technical and business discovery. So what do you have in your organization? What does it look like? Then you would implement a zero trust architecture and strategy. You would think about that. You would optimize it, and then you go forward into basically running that. What does that actually look like in real terms when it comes to zero trust? There's a learning curve, and if anybody wants to fancy going and trying this when you go back to the office, then this is the way to do it. So on the learning curve, you have protecting services. So you would normally identify a critical asset that is low impact to your business, but you can identify, you work out the interdependencies of that application, for example, and it's really important that you understand all of the interdependencies, all the back-end systems, what they connect to, who has access to them, and then you learn from that, and then you go and implement it. You practice that on the next system, and then eventually you get up to the crown jewels, which is the absolutely mission-critical application. But by that time, you've already worked out how you implement a zero trust architecture, and then hopefully you go on you freewheel down through the applications, and ultimately, in a couple of years' time, you've got to this nirvana where you've got zero trust, and it's fantastic. Okay. So one of the things people talk about when they're talking about zero trust is ZTNA, and I just want to straighten something out here, that ZTNA is not zero trust. ZTNA is also another concept, right? It's about providing secure remote access to organisations' applications and services, etc., etc. So they are not the same. In fact, when you look at some ZTNA implementations, I think they're actually stretching the ZT bit because there's no zero trust in it whatsoever. So anyway, I will go into that. So as I mentioned right at the start, you know, things are very much changing when you look at business transformation and how it has accelerated over the last couple of years. Applications are sitting in various locations, on-prem, off-prem, in the cloud, wherever they need to be. You've got SaaS applications, I think everyone's adopting them. But then you've got the users. The users are no longer just sitting at home. So what we've come up with is probably the most comprehensive approach to this solution, which is our SASE solution called Prisma Access. And what we actually look at here is how do we connect branches, users, headquarters, wherever those users may be, to the applications in the most consistent way possible, but delivering not only security services, network connectivity, but also something that's sometimes missed out, which would be a real nice to have, is the digital experience management. So how do you deliver the experience to your users? Because ultimately you don't want them picking up the phone to the help desk saying, oh, I can't get into this SaaS application today because I'm getting really bad performance, and the help desk go, raise a ticket, or switch it off, switch it back on again, reboot, you know, it's probably your home router or whatever it is. How do you identify that? So that's something that we've been looking at and we can deliver now. So as I was saying, work is an activity, it's not a place anymore, and I think you probably all are very well aware of that. So you need to be able to secure consistently where your workforce are and how do they get to those applications. So this is what it traditionally looked like. Nice simple diagram. You know, you've got your nice user sitting in his warm, comfy office. You know, his apps are in the data center, beautiful. You can put a nice wall around it, got great security, happy days. Unfortunately, the attack surface has now just exploded. You've got both the sanctioned applications, those applications that you as a business have signed up to, that are SaaS applications. You've also got the unsanctioned ones that Fred Bloggs in accounts has just signed up for a Box account on his credit card, and he's using that on your corporate network, or he's using it from home whilst on the corporate network. How do you identify that? How do you take control of that? So there was a solution, or there is a solution, ZTNA. Lots of people are talking about this. Lots of organisations talk about ZTNA. I'll call it 1.0, right? Their solution is to bring into play the user remotely. They may have a pack file or something like that. They connect into an access broker. The access broker basically decides on whether or not that user should be granted access to the applications wherever they may be. Once that is done, the application traffic flow works to that user, happy days, but then the access broker takes a step back and says, right, great, off you go, carry on. So what that's doing is really compromising your security posture at that point, because suddenly that is not zero trust, right? Because you verified them once and now you're just letting them pass through and there's no more inspection. So what happens if that user is compromised in some way through a back door? You know, they're sitting at home, they've got another session open and they've just got compromised. There's no more verification on that. Some other challenges that you have is the access broker will over-provision the access rights by that user. So I want to grant them all full access rights to Office 365, O365, right? Well, maybe you don't want them to have full access rights to everything within that suite. Maybe you need to limit them, or it's another application. So it actually violates the principles of least privileged access as well. Once a connection is set up, it basically allows and then ignores. So everything can just pass through. Applications get minimal inspection. So we see lateral movement, we see malware, hidden, command and control constantly. So sitting in line is something that you really need to be doing and inspecting continually, because you just don't know when somebody gets compromised. You just have no idea. You need to be decrypting, you need to be looking into that traffic flow and making sure that everything is sound within that flow from the users. It's also really important that you are fully aware of the applications as well, wherever those applications may be. And they can be common applications on-prem. They could be SaaS applications. I mean, we need to be able to cover all bases as security professionals. And also, many of you probably have bespoke applications that were custom built for you and your business. Manufacturing have them, oil and gas have them. I'm sure lots of different verticals have their own custom applications. You need to be able to identify them, and you need to be able to manage and control those applications as well. So what does ZTNA 2.0? This is our Prisma Access solution. What does this actually give you? Because we're in line and we are looking at everything all the time, we have application aware and user aware as well. We can give you least privileged access. So we can limit and control application access by an individual anytime. Continual trust verification. If anything changes, you get some numpty like me, maybe something's not working on my laptop at home, so I'm going to go and turn something off. See if I can speed it up. I'll turn that antivirus thing off. That's probably a wrong example, but I'm going to turn something off. I'm a liability, right? You need to instantly identify that and now mitigate against that, okay? That is really important. Continually inspection. So what happens if I'm numpty again at home, little Johnny comes in with a USB stick and I plug it in. I mean, it's probably a bad example, but I plug something in, or I'm surfing on something else. I've turned off the VPN. I'm surfing on something else. I've now got my endpoint compromised. You need to watch out for lateral movement, and you also need to protect all data. Protect all the data wherever it may be. So you need to think about things like DLP and CASB. You need to think about data exfiltration out of your organisation. You've got workers that could be anywhere, literally anywhere. They're saying they're working from home. They've actually gone off on a long weekend to Mallorca, and they're working from a bar in Mallorca. I've heard it all, trust me. So anything could happen, and the applications as well. Super important that you have visibility on everything in there. So this is what our solution looks like. So user basically comes in, least privileged access. We identify who you are, and then we will grant access into Prisma Access and your network based on who you are. We've identified you, and then we are going to continually identify and scrutinize you for trust and verify everything there. So we have device ID, so we can even look at a device. So not everything has a human attached to it, right? So sometimes you've got to identify just a compute node. Why is that compute node trying to make contact? Do the application identification. What applications are they using? And should they be granted access to that? And then you've got all of the richness of the security controls that we have that we can deliver against anything there. CASB is also something that really needs to be considered. We've got DLP and we've got CASB capabilities that are in line. So if somebody decides to sneak out, maybe it's a disgruntled user, maybe it's a wayward user, decides to send a document out that is confidential. How do you detect that without tromboning it to some other solution, the DLP solution? Maybe you need to have it in line and start looking at that. And then you've got those SaaS applications there are two different, well, there's multiple different categories, but you've got the sanctioned SaaS applications, those ones that you believe as an organization that you're using, which may be about, I don't know, 37, 40 of them. And then you've got the unsanctioned, which is another 100 that all the users are using because they've signed up. They love a little bit of SaaS application, right? So how do you control that and how do you mitigate against that as a threat? So one of the things really important around our solution as well is about availability. I think for an organization, if you're looking at a distributed workforce, distributed organization, distributed applications, you need to make sure that you keep it simple and availability is there, right? So you need that. So our cloud-scaled architecture is actually based on two of the world's leading cloud-native CSPs of Google and AWS. I'm sure you both, well, I'm sure you use them both, right? Everybody uses them, right? We use them as well because, you know, we could go and build our own data centers. We are not cloud experts in building data centers. Google are, AWS are, they've been doing it years. We could go and rack a load of stuff in a data center and call it a cloud. I'm not sure that you would believe us. Some people do, but we don't do that. So that's what we use. That gives us a global reach. So now you could have a remote user that gets on a plane, goes down to Sydney, wants connectivity into your network, and maybe you've got a data center in Reigate or somewhere, you know, south of London, and it would be a single hop for them. But it would be a single hop, so the user experience would be great. They'd have a single hop, and you would be able to overlay all of that security capability on that user to make sure that you are absolutely as watertight as you possibly can with that user, no matter wherever they go. Data plane isolation is something else that we're very proud of because every single customer gets their own data plane, so there is no commingling of traffic. So, for example, Pepsi Cola versus Coca-Cola, you know, they really wouldn't want to be on the same network. They really wouldn't want to be sharing any common infrastructure, especially if it's end of month for one of them and the other one's trying to do a CEO briefing to the organization, and suddenly that one doesn't work because they're doing a data upload or something. That would be really bad. So you've got protection there within our solution. I mentioned the digital experience management as well earlier. So that also overlays on the whole thing. So now, as an IT organization, you now have a weapon at your disposal, or tool. Weapon's probably the wrong word. But you've got something at your disposal. So Fred now rings up from Sydney and says, my experience is really bad. My access to Office 365 is a bit poor, it's a bit sketchy, keeps dropping out. You can now get some instrumentation and telemetry on exactly what his session looks like. So you can now identify whether or not it's the Prisma Access solution. Is it their local loop down in Sydney? Is it their workstation that is overutilized? Or maybe their Wi-Fi network. So you can get that instrumentation so you can try and actually target a solution for that individual much more readily than you would before. Okay, so that's something that we've brought into the Prisma Access SASE solution for ZTNA 2.0. Is just that visibility. It's absolutely critical. We use it internally. They always say, you know, drink your own champagne. So that's what we do, and it's great. They can identify in a proactive way where there are any issues around user experience and try and correct that. Projects that are driving this, we've got VPN solutions. You know, people are moving, they want to upgrade their VPN connectivity. Maybe it's old, it's creaking, it's not scaling. They need to renew those projects. SWIG, so secure web gateway replacements. That's something, you know, there's a lot of aging and creaking technology out there that is probably not being invested in a great deal at the moment. needs replacing, and then you've got CASB and also DLP solutions that also drive some of those transformations. So the old way of doing it would be, I'll just go and grab another off-the-shelf point product, and I'll have them all running in separate silos. But you know and I know that the poor guys in the SOC on their little wheelie chairs scooting up, they haven't got a single pane of glass that they can look at for that solution. They're scooting up and down and they're looking at 5 panes of glass trying to resolve technical issues. And when it comes to security posture, it's very difficult trying to correlate all of that together to actually give you a decent outcome. So when you look at what we can do is really unifying all of that. So you've got one solution, so you can automatically, using flexibility of the solution, just deploy what you need. And as and when you need something different, you just turn it on. And you may have some more complexity initially to just think about how you're going to plan this out, but once it's in the ground, your life's going to be so much easier going forward because you just need to turn something on, you just turn it on, okay? For users, for branches, great for M&A if you're an acquisitive organization. It's a great way to bring other organizations into your business because you can actually deploy a security posture to that organization, their remote users, very, very swiftly with the agility that you need as an organization. I'll leave this is probably a slide that summarizes it all. It's not just about technology, it's about business outcomes ultimately, right? You as CISO, CIOs, ultimately you need business outcomes. You need to save money, make money, you need flexibility, agility. That's where this solution really comes into play. So if there's any slide you want to take a photo of, take it of that one, because this is where it sort of brings it all together. Visibility and security, technology debt reduction as well, sort of trying to get rid of and consolidate some of those old and creaking siloed solutions, get rid of them and start bringing them into a more cohesive, integrated solution. And that is the end of my little session for today on ZTNA and Zero Trust.